Good morning. Welcome to the orientation webinar for the Tribal Advisory Committee to help us prepare California Water Plan Update 2018. I'm Kamyar Guvechi. I manage statewide integrated water management at the Department of Water Resources, and I've been working on the water plan for the last 16 years, and I look forward to working with all of you on the 2018 update. I want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate on this orientation webinar. We have right now on the webinar screen the agenda for today's meeting. And what I'd like to do right up at the beginning is kind of introduce our water plan team while reviewing the topics we'd like to cover today. So this is the launch of the Update 2018 engagement process, and last week we held webinars for the Policy Advisory Committee, and this is intended to begin convening the Tribal Advisory Committee. First up, Paul Macera will provide you the overview of the new direction and proposed content for Water Plan Update 2018. And then we're going to have Emily Alejandrino is going to describe, and Anacita Agustinez are going to describe the role of the Tribal Advisory Committee, as well as talking a little about the work plan and the roles and responsibilities. Then Jenny Marr is going to give you a preview of what we plan to cover on October 25th here in Sacramento. In the morning will be the inaugural meeting of the Policy Advisory Committee, which is open to everyone, as well as in the afternoon, the 2016 plenary meeting, which is the first of 3 annual plenary meetings for Update 2018. Jenny will also give you a preview of what topics we're going to cover in both of those meetings. What I'm going to do now is also introduce Lisa Butler, who's providing facilitation and meeting support for Update 2018, and she's going to give you a quick overview or logistics of the webinar session.
Good morning. Thank you, Kamyar. What we're going to do is just, if you can hear me and everything's working okay for you, there's a little button on your control panel. It has a hand. You could just raise your hand so that we know that you've got good audio and things are working for you. Great. Thank you so much. I'm seeing some hands go up. And one of the things that we'd like you to know is that if you'd like to talk during the presentation, just raise your hand and we'll be happy to call on you and open your mic. If you're calling in on your computer, just make sure you have a headset. Otherwise, we probably won't be able to hear you if you don't have a regular mic. But on the phone, we're happy to open your mic and let you call in and ask questions or anything like that. And if you don't really want to do that, feel free to drop us a note. There's a little question and chat area, same thing in your control panel. Feel free to do that. We've got lots of time for questions, and the whole team is here that will be able to answer that. So with that, let me just turn it back to you, Kamyar.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd also like to introduce Francisco Guzman, and I'm going to ask Francisco to go to the home page of the California Water Plan, just to familiarize you with it, and to show that through this website you can get access to all of the meeting materials and the Tribal Advisory Committee information, as well as DWR's Tribal Advisor, Anacita Agustinez's web page. So right now, Francisco has clicked on the meeting materials, and you'll see that this meeting, this webinar, is posted there, and you can access the agenda and all of the materials that we will be covering. The one exception is the Tribal Advisory Committee charge document, which we will show you during the webinar. We haven't had a chance to post it yet, but we will post it right after the webinar today.
We might mention, too, that we're going to be recording this session, so if for some reason you know someone that would have liked to have attended but didn't get a chance to, that will be online, and that will also be with the meeting materials after the session.
Thank you. And then, Francisco, if you could also just go back to the home page and show folks how to get to the Tribal AC webpage, so participation, and then the Tribal Advisory Committee, and we have an entire page section of the Water Plan website dedicated to the Tribal Advisory Committee, and this is where we will be posting your information as we work through this process. And also, Francisco, if you could go to the DWR Tribal Policy Advisor webpage, and this is the page that Anacita Agustinez and her team maintain, and there's just a treasure trove of information on DWR activities and our tribal engagement and consultation process. And anything else, Anacita, you'd like to say about this page before we move on?
No, I think that's it's a good starting point. If you're not familiar with the DWR website, we try to have a lot of cross links to not only to the California Water Plan, but the links to the Proposition 1 water bond funding, which I know is a very interesting hot topic at the moment, given that where we are with the implementation of the funding on that. So the water bond, the last there, Proposition 1 water bond, that will be continually updated with information. We also intend to update the third bullet there, which is the bottom Francisco, which was the June 9th and 10th update on presentation on the Proposition 1 water bond. We will be updating that in terms of each funding initiative that DWR has. If you open up the top page, the top bullet there, Francisco, you'll be familiar with this brochure, and we will be updating this, and it'll have every funding initiative from DWR, and we hope to have that within the next 30 days.
Thank you, Anacita. And there certainly will be time for question and answer, so if you would like more information about anything that we present, please make a note, and we will want to hear from you during this webinar. So with that, I'm going to ask Francisco to take us to the presentation that Paul Macera is going to cover to give you a description of the focus of Update 2018. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Camara. Thank you for joining us today. Again, as Camara mentioned, my name is Paul Macera, and I'm going to provide you with an overview of where the Water Plan Update 2018 is headed, with kind of a sampling of the types of topics that we will be approaching within this Water Plan, and also some of the frameworks that we're using to prepare the Water Plan. So I wanted to walk you through, again, a sampling of how we're putting this plan together. First of all, the Brown administration released a Water Action Plan, as I'm sure we're all aware, in 2014, and that plan was updated in 2016. And there are directives in there that we have used to really shape how we're going to approach Update 2018. That being the case, we've identified 6 of what we're viewing as the most important intended outcomes for Update 2018. And I'll go over each of these as I go through the presentation. An important aspect of Update 2018, and it's something that we had progressed a lot in Update 2013, and that is aligning across state government. Well, in this case now, for this upcoming water plan, there have been a lot of state initiatives that have occurred subsequent to the release of our last water plan. So things like the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and Proposition 1, and again, I'll list those out shortly. But the point here is that we need to recognize that all of these activities are occurring, and it needs to be brought into a broader, more comprehensive context of Update 2018. So despite a lot of the recent initiatives and ongoing activities, there's a lot more work to do. And so we've identified some of the primary gaps that we feel need to be addressed for Update 2018, not the least of which are really developing a meaningful definition of sustainability such that it can actually be pursued through policies and actions, and also so that we can track progress to make sure that we are on a track towards sustainability. There's a lot of challenges in California water management. We've identified many of them in Update 2013, and obviously we can't broach and overcome all challenges in one water plan cycle. So that being the case, we've identified 4 primary barriers to sustainability that we will take on for Update 2018. So to address those 4 barriers, there are some key features that we framed up for the water plan that will enable us to address those barriers. I'll talk about those. And then lastly, I'll go into a little bit more detail on a state water finance plan. It's called for in the Governor's Water Action Plan. It's something that is a progression of where we ended in Update 2013. And so I'll give a little bit more detail on that. And then I want to wrap up with a just as important message as all of the content leading up to this, and that is if you take the long view of water management, what we're framing up here for this particular water plan cycle in 2018 will provide consistency going forward, and it will provide opportunities to create more robust and effective plans going forward. And I'm going to talk about more specifics about that later, but I just wanted to emphasize the value that occurs with this update, and then the value we see as increasing as time goes on in subsequent updates. So just to touch lightly on the Governor's Water Action Plan, really what the relationship between this and the water plan, besides some specific directives, which I'll talk about, but on the bigger picture, really it frames up this Brown administration's intent to focus on sustainability, and that's going to be really a key focus for Update 2018. And it's not a new concept. We feel that we're actually going to enable state government to move towards it more meaningfully with this update, but that concept certainly has been around for over a decade. This plan also brings together state agencies. It provides cohesion so that the agencies involved, the Cal EPA, CDFA, Natural Resources Agency, and the respective departments actually have a plan that is consistent across agencies, and it's coming from the Brown administration, which provides that the policy cohesion across state government. So it's very effective in that way as well. And I do want to recognize before I move off of the water plan that, as I mentioned, the Department of Water Resources was not the primary author or owner of the Water Action Plan, and we recognize that. So it is our intent to coordinate effectively across these 3 agencies shown and that I mentioned, as well as the respective departments, because this really needs to be, this Update 2018 really needs to be an extension of the Governor's Water Action Plan and have meaning and consistency across state agencies. So to get into a few more specifics, Action 10 of the Governor's Water Action Plan, Action 10 of 10, specifically calls for some innovative finance planning. And before I get into what exactly it calls for, I wanted to frame it up with what it recognizes leading into those recommendations and directives in Action 10 of the Action Plan. So basically, the backdrop or the context for where we're going is the fact that finance is complicated and it crosses all tiers of government. There's different methodologies, different constraints, and the action plan recognizes the need to have a more solid common understanding of these finance complexities. Another, what some might say is quite an obvious finding or recognition is that even at state, local, federal levels, all of them, the base budgets are generally inadequate and too unstable to fund the activities in the water plan as well as, in the water action plan, as well as Update 2013 and what we will recommend in Update 2018. So we need to get innovative and create more stable funding opportunities. This one is also fairly obvious and something we talked about a lot for the last water plan. It was one of the 3 themes in Update 2013, but the fact that the state government needs to align behind some common outcomes, and the action plan and by extension Update 2018 will provide a framework to do that. The action plan also recognizes it's important that we move away from reacting. I mean, that's always going to be a necessary water management strategy, to react to crises, things like droughts and floods and so on, ecosystem declines, sharp ecosystem declines. However, we're proposing it can be more effective if we are more proactive and get out in front of these issues, invest on the front end to stave off many of these, in my opinion, foreseeable emergencies that we generally react to as a water management community. There's a lot of investment needs going forward. The Water Plan Update 2013 identified up to $500 billion, with a B, $500 billion of investment out there in IRW, Integrated Regional Water Management Plans, capital improvement plans for cities and counties, and of course state government activities. So for this water plan update, it's critical that we prioritize what can the state invest in within this cycle of the water plan and over a finite planning horizon. In this case, we're proposing a 5-year investment strategy that I'll talk about in a moment. And then I already kind of set this up, the need to create a more stable and reliable and adequate funding sources for all of the activities that we'll be recommending. So that's the context for what is called for in the action plan. So this is specifically what we will be doing in Update 2018, at least with specific regard to Action 10 of the Governor's Water Action Plan. But this really is, I think, worth flagging as a focus and a key deliverable of Update 2018. So identifying barriers, we did that, we made a lot of progress in Update 2018, and also recommending opportunities to overcome barriers to state and local funding. The state needs a comprehensive state government water financing strategy, and Update 2018 is going to fill that niche. And then more specifically, the action plan calls for an analysis of different types of fees as a means to stabilize revenue for state government and other activities. So that being the case, as I said in the beginning, we've identified some intended outcomes that are we are preparing to achieve for Update 2018 in pursuit of what I just showed you, what called for in the Governor's Water Action Plan. So at the highest level, and I mentioned this a little bit too, that the Governor's Water Action Plan calls specifically and strongly for increased sustainability, put California on a trajectory towards sustainability, and we're going to do that in Update 2018. To accomplish that, a key strategy or a key accomplishment needs to be really increasing the effectiveness of state government, in particular, policy and state government investment. And I'll talk more about that in a moment, what that means. And then I also mentioned this earlier, but we really need to be able to track progress towards sustainability. Otherwise, we would never even really be aware of whether we are on track or not. And we need to do that in a way that is tangible and meaningful and implementable, despite the fact that there's a lot of data gaps and so on. There are challenges associated with it, but we have a framework to help us do that as well. The more specific outcomes, I mentioned this briefly a few moments ago, that we will prepare a 5-year policy and investment strategy that reflects the priorities of state government. And this is certainly a new feature for the water plan. And then how do we pay for it? So we identify the priorities, we estimate the costs under the existing funding constructs that we talked about or that I alluded to, state general fund, bonds. Generally, there is not enough stability in the funding to accomplish what we need to accomplish. we'll prepare a finance plan. So I underscored earlier also the importance that state government come together behind all of these initiatives that are occurring, and then, just as importantly, integrate these activities into a state water plan. And this is a good example of how the state initiatives that are listed here as examples, the state's involvement, the cost, the policy priorities associated with these need to be expressed in a statewide plan. And again, that's exactly what we're proposing for Update 2018. And just so you know, I'll pause here in a moment to give folks an opportunity to ask questions when I'm about halfway through here. So we are talking about a variety of topics, but a fairly kind of shallow overview at this particular stage. And we'll go into more detail on all of this at the October 25th plenary. So the state initiatives, I just showed you the examples. They're effective in many ways, they're useful, they're creating benefits, and much more must be done. There's still a lot of areas within California that are facing unacceptable flood risk. And the same is true for water supply reliability, substandard and unacceptable levels of reliability. Despite the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014, over the next decade, 1 to 3 decades, we do anticipate a continued depletion and degradation of groundwater resources. So how do we manage that in the interim? And then, of course, requiring little explanation is really the habitat and species declines that are occurring in certain ecosystems in certain areas of the state. So we're not there yet. Let me pause on the previous slide and see if at this point, if there are any questions.
Let me go ahead. This caught me off. I overlooked during the introductions to ask folks on the line to introduce themselves. And what I like to do is turn it over to Anasita and ask folks on the webinar to introduce themselves. And then if you also have any questions, do it at the same time.
So if the way the mics work for everybody, not everybody necessarily can do that. But
the phone.
Yeah, if anyone would like to talk, we'd love to hear from you. We're happy. Just raise your hand. I'll open your mic for you. And then otherwise, I think Anasita can kind of see who's here. Maybe.
Can we just open up all the mics?
Well, if they have the computer, that they actually can't talk because they're not set up to do that. But yeah, we do have a question up here for us. So, there's Lisa. So, Lisa, thank you. Go ahead.
Great. Well, I just wanted to say we were just anxious to get this webinar started with all this good information. Thank you for that, Kamyar. I also just want to say thank you to those participating on the phone, and I'll apologize for my voice, a little bit of the laryngitis. I think we have over 20 plus participants on this, and I do know that there was quite a bit of short notice, so I do appreciate all of you taking that time and energy to do that. So in terms of facilitation, Lisa, did you want to just go ahead and open the mic? And I do know we have a question, so go ahead and...
we'll go ahead and do that. So Lisa Gover from Campo Environmental Protection Agency, she's the director. She doesn't have a mic, but she just wanted to introduce herself. So if there's anybody else that would like to just drop me a chat and tell me who they are, we'll be happy to do that. Or if you want to raise your hand, I'll open your mic.
That'll work. Thank you.
I also can see we've got, in the meantime, we can go ahead here. We've got Blake. Here's Brett. Let me open that for you. Hi, Brett. Your mic's open. Go ahead if you'd like to talk. Brett? It's just a problem with
okay,
computers.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Why don't we just go ahead and do this for purposes of just continuity here in between Paul's short break. Why don't you go ahead, Lisa, and we'll just go with the names and your tribal affiliation, from Lisa based on our attendance list.
Okay, so we've got Blake Atkerson from
California Indian Legal Services.
And Brett McKenzie.
Brett Natsky.
Not sure where he's from.
And who's Christina.
Okay, and here's Blake. He's going to weigh in too. He says, "Hi, this is Blake. I'm the staff attorney at California Indian Legal Services from Osage Nation. Osage Nation. Anybody else? And we've got Claudine Montes.
Yes, thank you, Claudine. Claudine's representing the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, the government affairs person.
Great. And Heidi Brow.
Hello, Heidi. We have you recognized representing the Pala tribe. And Javier Silva just went offline, and Javier Silva's from Sherwood Valley. He's been a longtime member of our hi, Javier. I don't know if you've raised your hand or yet, but we're just recognizing you as a longtime participant in the California Water Plan updates in the last 2 iterations.
We've got a couple of DWR staff.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got Jennifer Colfoy, and we've got Jennifer Wong, and Jennifer's also one of the regional coordinators. Jennifer Colfoy is our internet guru person that makes all things technical happen.
Great. And for those of you participating from the Southern California office, Jennifer Wong is a regional tribal liaison, and she works out of our Glendale office, and she handles the Southern California offices, which is basically the boundaries of the Eastern Sierras, Glendale, California, and Santa Ynez tribes down to the border. And she is also very involved in grants. So she is someone to contact as a first contact, and obviously Emily Alejandrino or myself.
And then we've got Julie Colby.
Hi, Julie. Julie, we have recognized from the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians.
And Julie Griffin-Flatter.
Yes, Julie Griffin-Flatter is from our, Flattery is a tribal liaison representing the Sierra Nevada Conservancy.
She also webinar, so thanks for actually. Justin Apple.
Hello, Justin. I recognize you from the Viejas Band.
And Lisa, we just a bit ago. Lisa, thank you also, Lisa, for checking in on the question. She's got everything started. Margaret Park.
Hello, Margaret. Margaret, we recognize you as a counsel for the Agua Caliente. Thank you, and I know you've been participating in a lot of our groundwater issues, so it's great to see you listening in on California Water Plan.
And we've got Mark Radoff.
Yes. And Mark Radoff is also counsel at California Indian Legal Services.
And Mark Silva.
Yes, Mark is also California Indian Legal Services. Thank you, Mark.
Michelle Pena.
Michelle Pena is counsel here in Sacramento. She is from the La Pena Law Firm, and Michelle's been a long-time advocate and supporter of participating with the Tribal Advisory Committee and has done a lot of work with AB 52 issues. So thank you, Michelle, for attending.
We've got Oscar Serrano.
Hi, Oscar. Oscar is from the Calusa Band and also very much involved in the last Tribal Advisory Committee. He's seen a lot in terms of what we've done in the 2009 and 2013 Tribal Water Summit, as well as the California Water Plan update.
And Oscar also served on the Public Advisory Committee as well. So thank you. Patrick Tabor.
Patrick Tabor is recognized representing the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
And Ron Good, Chairman.
Yes, Chairman Ron Good, welcome, and thank you. I hope you're feeling well. Chairman Ron Good from the North Fork Band has been very, very much involved, so we look forward to working with you again in California Water Plan Update 2018.
Samuel Cohen.
Samuel Cohen, General Counsel for Santa Ynez Band of Chumash. Thank you, Sam, for attending. Pass.
Okay. And Sunita.
Sunita Balajic is an assistant in my office. Thank you, Sunita. And I think we are at the end of it.
Yeah, we've got all 21. So, we've got Tito.
Yes, and Javier Tito Cervantes is a chief of the, can you help me with that, out of the North Coast, Tito can send us the land and water use in our Northern Region office in Red Bluff. Many of you are familiar with him, and Tito's also regional tribal liaison, so very strong asset to our tribal communities and the services they provide out of that mapping and water use.
Great, and so that gives us all 21, plus we've got the folks in the room with us today, which is
I already
introduced. Great, thank you.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Anacita and Lisa, and again, I apologize for my oversight. I was so anxious to get into the content, I overlooked the important part of the introduction. What I'd like to do then is to ask Paul to continue his presentation, and what you'll see in this next segment, the 2018 update is really going to take to heart what we have heard from all tribes and tribal organizations in California, that sustainability is really the prerequisite of making all this work. And I think the California Water Plan is just beginning to catch up to all of you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul.
All right. So where we left off was that we recognize there's a lot of activities and initiatives that are occurring, and we will be integrating and aligning those within the next water plan, and there's more that must be done. And specifically, an important first step is really evolving the ideal of sustainability into something that can be materially tracked with strategic policy decisions and investment, and also demonstrated progress. So we've created a description of sustainability and a framework to define it, to describe it in a way such that we can actually pursue it. And I want to emphasize that's actually, I think, a great innovation that will enable us to move towards it. So what's central to the description of sustainability is the fact that it's not a state of being that we can declare ourselves there at any certain point. So it's not a destination, it's a journey. And it'll become more evident as I evolve the description of sustainability, what exactly that means. But I think it's also useful to describe what sustainability is not, particularly with regard to some of the activities that we currently undertake, and maybe even mistake as putting us on a trajectory towards sustainability. So really, a common historical practice, which is valuable and necessary going forward and provides benefits, is creating project scale implementation at a local, regional, or statewide scale. Very necessary. But what we're suggesting is it's also inadequate to put California and keep California on a track of statewide sustainability. It's much broader than that. At the same time, and kind of in the same vein, sustainability cannot be achieved or progress towards sustainability by defining California water management as a set of 5 to 10 problems with these 5 to 10 solutions that will quote-unquote solve our problems. It's a contiguous management activity that's required to track towards sustainability. And that gets to the third bullet. We need to describe it, create policy to get us towards it, and then continuously loop back and check and see if we're on course. When we're off course or not quite on course, we need to create new or tweaked policies to help course correct. And really that's just adaptive management. It's another way of describing adaptive management. So getting more specific about what sustainability is, we've created these 4 categories of societal values that we feel encompass all of the societal values that we've heard through all of our stakeholder activities to date, including extensive outreach and collaboration with Update 2013. And many of you might recognize what's here as kind of an extension of what is commonly referred to as the 3 E's, economic, environmental, and equity. But we've expanded on that third E, the equity or the social aspects, a little bit. With that 4th item, enriching experiences, I just wanted to mention that because that's maybe the least intuitive or self-explanatory of these 3 of the 4 things. So,
probably for the public advisory committee, but maybe not this.
Well, true. Excellent point, yes. And the description that we have behind it is something I think we need to make sure that we have a good understanding of what that is and that it's effective relative to all of your perspectives. And so what that is involves not just recreation, obviously. There are the spiritual well-being that can be derived from natural resources, specifically water-based or water-dependent natural resources. and that also includes religious activities as well. So I just wanted to flag that as also an innovation for this particular water plan, and we'd like to hear from you all as to, and we'll talk about it in even more detail on October 25th. You'll have an opportunity to see a more detailed description of what that entails. We'd like to hear from you all as to whether or not we're on the right track with that. And the other point I'd like to make here, besides emphasizing that enriching experiences, is the fact that sustainability isn't, again, accomplishing projects or a destination within these 4 categories. It's actually balancing our investment and our policy going forward across these things that are all very important. So that's how we're proposing, and we have a framework that will enable us to do it, but that's how we're proposing actually implementing policy towards sustainability. But this framework gives us a great construct to guide, I think, more effective conversations going forward as well. So I mentioned in the intro there's some barriers that we've identified, 4 primary barriers to sustainability that we will be tackling for this water plan. And one of them I just talked about, that I think we need to come together and make sure that we all have an acceptable and effective definition and explanation and ultimately understanding of what sustainability is. Governance, there's, we heard no uncertain terms with Update 2013, thousands of water management agencies across the state at different levels of government. Yet water management occurs on a watershed or a river basin scale. So the need for revisiting how we govern water management activities. Finance, I'll talk about more in a moment. And regulations and permitting, I did want to give a brief explanation of what that means as well. There's statutory framework in place. The example here of something that's not particularly effective, and it's recognized across the environmental community as well, fairly broadly, is single species management as an example. What we're proposing is to broaden the discussion and broaden in the future the way we manage and regulate ecosystems on more of an ecosystem-based approach, again, kind of getting back to that watershed and river basin scale, and regulating to outcomes so we can measure the outcomes. Are we recovering a species? Are we recovering the habitat? And is it creating sustainable habitats and ecosystems? As opposed to, I mean, really all we can track right now in the way of outcomes are we complying with prescriptions? Are we complying with statutory requirements? So we're proposing a broader view of regulation and permitting as part of a bigger picture of water management going forward. So some of the key features that we are framing up for this water plan to help us overcome the barriers and ultimately create more effectiveness for state investment and policy. I'm repeating this again because it's an important new feature of the water plan, and that is aligning all these water initiatives, where they're headed now and where they're projected to go within one prioritized 5-year investment strategy that reflects the priorities of state government, and then the accompanying finance plan on how we pay for it. We need a clear articulation of those societal values that I talked about, and so again, we want to engage you and others in that conversation to make sure that it's framed up properly. And then, just as importantly, based on those societal values and how they're framed up, we need to, on the front end of a planning process, express our intended outcomes. What do we want to achieve with respect to those societal values? And then we also have a framework that will create or provide a more structured approach for prioritizing for state government activities. And that message of consistency is important also going forward. About that in a moment as well. And then again, getting back to the fact that we need to measure progress in a way that tracks back to those 4 societal values and can answer the question, are we balancing our policies and investments relative to those 4 values? So I mentioned earlier too that I was going to go into a little bit more detail on a finance plan because again, I think this is a much anticipated new feature for Update 2018, and it's important that we all start off with a common understanding of what this is going to be and what the opportunities are for us to shape it. First off, I will just set the stage by saying that a finance plan, what we're proposing, is much broader than maybe conventional understanding of the finance plan being how we pay for something. You frame up a project, determine what's the best way to finance it, and call it a finance plan. We're suggesting that actually it's much broader, what we're proposing for state government, and this is an extension of what we did in Update 2013 through very extensive coordination with many stakeholders in Update 2013. So this framework that I'm going to share with you emerged from that, and we intend to use it to create the finance plan for Update 2018. I talked about shared intended outcomes. We need to state that up front. What do we want to achieve? And this needs to be in more depth than we need to construct a project X in location Y. What we're proposing is we need to hear about what are the things that we genuinely care about, what are the tangibles, again, linking back to those societal values in a meaningful way. Having expressed our share, what are the policies and actions that are have the highest probability of accomplishing those outcomes? That requires assessment, in many cases very technical assessment, sometimes not so much. But the recognition that we need to actually, I guess you might say, determine the feasibility and effectiveness of the alternative policies and actions. We need to identify what the existing funding is and what the existing funding streams are, obviously, to determine what the funding gaps are. We know where we want to be, we know where we are, what are the gaps, and those gaps will inform our finance plan. How do we help fill them going forward? A big part of our conversation for the last water plan was, if we're going to develop a finance plan, what are we financing? Specifically with regard to state government. What is state government's role going to be? What is it now, and what is it going to be going forward? And so those are great questions, and we need to be clear about that as part of this update, and in order to create not only a viable finance plan, but I'd say, well-supported finance plan. Being upfront about what state government's roles will be, that will enable us to develop what the costs are, the funding demands for the item number 2, what are the policies and actions, and informed by the state government role in implementing and managing those actions and policies. And then we start talking about how do we pay for it? What are the opportunities to create more stable revenue sources? And then also important is determining if our actions and policies that we've implemented are effective. The state's water management system, I think a lot of us, and I'm sure a lot of you on the phone understand and have an intuition about this complexity. We can't determine with certainty what a policy or action will do to the water management system. We can do our assessments and determine what's feasible and what we think is effective, but really we need to implement, monitor, learn, and adapt. So it's really a cycle that we're proposing, and that number 8 helps us determine what we've learned and how we need to adapt going forward. So I'm going to conclude with this slide, and this warrants a little bit of explanation, but I think it's a really important point that we'd like to make here, and that is for the Update 2018 process, you can see on the left that first loop of ribbon. You can see the initiatives that I referred to earlier being informing the water plan and shaping the water plan. And then on the bottom left, you can see steps A through D. That's a rough summary of the finance framework that I showed you, setting intended outcomes, tracking progress, and so on. But this illustrates the cyclic nature, and this is what I talked about in the beginning of the presentation here, is the value of having a consistent framework going forward where we can clarify and refine and update our intended outcomes with each water plan cycle. And then we can actually track progress. Did the actions of the prior update, what's been implemented, and how effective was it in meeting those outcomes? And given the complexity of the system that we're all aware of, there will be course corrections required. So it will be in that learn and adapt mode. And that's really steps C and D, is to figure out what worked, what didn't, what can we do differently that may be more effective. And so that's really the cycle between these water plans. But each time we do that, we clarify, we enhance our ability to track and report on progress, whether it's data or analytical tools or stakeholder involvement through ecological knowledge and so on. And that allows us to sharpen our recommendations. So the fact that that diameter of that ribbon increases for each of the water plans is an illustration of the robustness and more effectiveness of each water plan, given that we have a consistent framework that we'd like to use going forward. And so that's taking the long view, but I think, again, it's just as important to recognize the foundation that we're developing here in this water plan that will create, in my opinion, a legacy going forward of more effective water management. And that's all the content I had for today. I'd like to offer this opportunity to respond to any questions. If we're seeing any, Lisa? Or?
We did want to acknowledge Frank. Do you want to?
Thank you, Frank Ramirez, Government Affairs Person for the Native American Veterans. Thank you for joining us.
So we do have the line open. Again, we're happy to ask Frank if he had a question, but he said he was good.
Okay.
I will recognize that this was a lot of information, and we will be elaborating starting on October 25th, so there will be other opportunities to.
That's great. And then also, people will be getting a follow-up email, so if you think of something after the fact, also, again, this is going to be recorded. Please feel free to share with anybody. But I know that all of the team here is very much looking forward to working with the group.
So this is Kamyar. Thank you, Paul, and we do have time later in the agenda open for open comments. So if questions or comments occur to you as we move to the next agenda items, please make note, and we really would like to hear from you. So with that, we're now on agenda item 3 to give you a little bit more information about what we're thinking in terms of the role and responsibilities of the Tribal Advisory Committee, an initial work plan and meeting schedule, and also talk about doing the 3rd Tribal Water Summit. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Emily and Anacita.
Good morning. This is Emily, Tribal Water Plan Tribal Liaison. Welcome, and again, thank you for your time for joining us. I've noticed online we do have some Tribal Water Plan Tribal Liaison. Again, appreciate it. So I am going to go over sort of what we're calling the Tribal Advisory Committee charge. And for those who were with us at the last update, many of this language will look familiar to you because a lot of this text was drawn from the group charter that was developed at the last update. So begin, here's just a little preamble which kind of generally discusses the water plan, its purpose, and that it's a plan that's updated every 5 years, present information on California's water resources. The Cal Water Plan has always built on comments made in previous updates. As part of it is engaging the tribal community and organizations. Recall in Update 2009, we had the Tribal Communications Committee, who were also instrumental in planning the Tribal Water Summit that we have with each water plan cycle. And one of the recommendations from that update was for 2013 to have a Tribal Advisory Committee, which we did convene, held another water summit in 2013. And so here we are getting ready for 18. And again, it's the same as that Tribal AC. It's just a forum where tribes and organizations develop materials for the water plan to ensure that the tribal perspectives on land and water culture are included in those materials. Some roles and responsibilities for the Tribal AC members. Want to participate in a consensus-seeking process, to discuss, develop, and find policy proposals and recommendations well as other content for the update, develop recommendations and proposals that consider statewide tribal concerns and perspectives, not the perspective of tribes identifying members. Regularly brief the respective tribe and organizations. Basically, have tribal AC members act as liaisons for the water plan staff back to their tribes and the communities, and also to get input from the tribe that we could use as the water plan. The tribal AC is considered a separate entity from the individual tribes, communities, and organizations. Recommendations and proposals developed by the tribal AC should not be considered recommendations or proposals of the individual tribe represented on the AC unless it's endorsed specifically by the tribe. Two things we definitely want to stress is that the tribal AC recommendations and proposals shall be submitted to individual tribes for approval endorsement in order to provide a greater statewide consensus and support. The AC is not a consultation body, and so this is just a way to share information and communication, and so therefore it does not replace government-to-government consultation. The tribal AC also is to advise the water plan team on any tribal AC efforts to implement recommendations from the 2013 water. So we have many of you who were involved with the water summit, the last iteration. There was a set of guiding principles, and part of the roles is to make sure that those guiding principles and recommendations are followed through for this next update. Tribal C members are to provide leadership to topic-based meetings or new regional forums. As mentioned, again, planning for the next Tribal Summit for Update 2018, which I will discuss a little bit later, and also participating in our annual stakeholder planning sessions, which Jenny will discuss for the one coming up next week. There, the water plan team will agree to provide staff support and, as needed, any professional facilitator for the meetings. The team will collect organized data, draft text for review, provide technical support, physical arrangements for the meeting, as well as try as we can remote access, and also just any requested information. Our executive sponsor for this update is our Deputy Director, Gary Bardini, to provide resources for the effort, and also communication consultation with state agencies to provide the policy perspective of the administration, as well as just overall direction. And also developing in Update 2018, along with our Tribal Advisory Committee, we also have a state agency steering committee, as well as a policy advisor committee. Time commitment, we're looking at maybe 2 to 3 meetings per year to the end of 2018. And if necessary, we may hold an occasional, which probably will be a webinar, and also 3 annual plenary meetings, which are the larger gatherings of the water plans, water stakeholders. Attendance, so we understand that you guys have very, very busy schedules and you try as you can to participate. So we do stress that members are committed to maintain the integrity of the group by attending the meetings. As I mentioned earlier, we will try to provide remote access like a conference call and webinars. And we'll make a point to, as we showed you earlier, post all meeting materials and meeting summaries on the website to stay up to date. Any member may withdraw at any time, and you just go ahead and please send me an email if you wish to withdraw and to communicate the reasons for withdrawing. And if for some reason you cannot make a meeting, just let me know, and I'll make sure you get the information. Decision making, it is a consensus-seeking process. We try to move items forward that are recommended by the tribal AC as a group product. However, if we notice a broad degree of maybe support or dissent on a particular item, we'll not forward that item as a group product. However, that level of support will be recorded, and if there is a fundamental disagreement among the AC on an item, the committee will be asked to continue working on areas where there's more agreement as possible. We understand that AC members may not always be able to commit their agency, organization, or tribe to a particular conclusion. However, the members will operate and represents their organizations in good faith and contribute the best available information. Members are not required to commit to a position on any item, and the executive sponsor will note areas of agreement and disagreement. And in the end, either bill will decide on the final content of update 2018. With that, let me go ahead and we'll go back to the water plan materials page, Tribal Advisory Committee page. I'll go and share with you sort of the actually, I'll show you. Hold on, sorry about that.
Go back.
And by the way, if anyone would like to talk, just drop me a note or raise your hand. And Claudine, I saw your hand was up, so I'm not sure if you'd like to talk. There we go. Thank you. She was just letting me know there was a problem with the screen. So thank you, Claudine. But if anyone would like to talk, be happy. She said it's working now. Thank you.
So here is the work plan engagement schedule. As we had 2 webinars last week with our Health Advisory Committee, here's today's Tribal AT webinar. Next week is our first plenary. Tentatively, we're looking at next year in spring to have a meeting again in August. Next fall would be the second plenary. In 2018, we will have our preview of the public review draft, February, March 2018, the release of the draft, the comment period. May 2018, we'll have another Tribal AC meeting to review the responses to the public comment. In August 2018, we'll hold a joint policy and Tribal Advisory Committee meeting towards our last plenary, 2018. You can see in the fall, preparing the governor's draft, hold our last meeting in the end of December 2018, and release the final update. Again, these dates are tentative, and as the schedule firms up, that information will be shared with the group and also posted online. And going back to that other slide I pulled up earlier.
And if I could just interrupt at this moment to the audience, this is a work plan that is tentative, and we just basically made some milestone markers for some very, very general public meetings, and especially Joint Policy Advisory Committee as well as Tribal Advisory Committee. I noticed that in the California Water Plan update in 2013, the ability to share at those general sessions, those joint meetings, was really, I think, very positive. We want to encourage that, as well as also allow for individual, our own Tribal Advisory Committee meetings. So, although we've marked major milestone meetings, it does not negate the ability to, especially as we get into the deeper concerns and issues, and if we need to have webinars and discussion meetings, we will do that in response to as issues come up. So this is by no means a set schedule in terms of all the potential meetings, and we definitely want to be able to address concerns, especially as we go into topics that might have some real discussions going back and forth. We want to really vet that and have all the voices heard at that point. Go ahead, Emily.
Sort of again, this is just a timeline. This is where we're at now, and the milestones on particular reports. We submit as required.
Emily, just a little bit louder.
Okay,
clearer.
Yeah. So here's our meeting timeline for meetings and deliverables. You can see on top we have, as required as the water code, particular reports and drafts that need to be released with the water plan. There are plenary meetings. And down here again is, as I showed earlier, as MC mentioned, sort of some kind of key points where we'd like to have our Tribal Advisory Committee meetings. And again, they can be joined with the policy. We could also hold additional discussions via webinar. And here, Tribal Water Summit, it does say May, but that's tentative. That's just there to ensure that the Water Summit has to occur no later than May 2018 in order for the proceedings to be incorporated into the California Water Plan. So we'll probably see, actually Tito Cervantes, who's on the line, has taken the lead to start planning for the Water Summit, so you may be hearing from him shortly. What we're looking at is perhaps holding 2 planning meetings, one in Northern Southern California and one in Northern and Southern California, to discuss the Water Summit, in concurrence also with any meeting times we can do at the Tribal AC. And we hope to have a date and a location set for Tribal Water Summit 2018, probably in the spring, no later. Also, that's going to be occurring is on Good, who's on the phone. He was actually in the Water Plan Advisory Committee member since the beginning. He was also instrumental in Update 2009 with the Tribal Water Stories, and we are launching a 2nd edition of that effort. So that is something I just want to say that's coming soon. I actually will be sending a survey out just to gauge kind of interest in what stories are out there and who's willing to share. And again, that is something that we hope to have 2nd edition Tribal Water Stories at the next Water Summit. It's going to be a little bit different than the 1st edition. The focus is going to be strictly water stories. And unfortunately, due to just time and resources, we will not have a video component to that.
And for those that aren't familiar with the last round when you did the water stories, they have received really national attention. There's been discussion about them in several national level publications. It was really an amazing product when it was produced.
Yeah, and those who are new to this Water Plan process, even the Tribal Advisory Committee, I have information from Update 2009, 2013, and if you do want copies of proceedings of the Water Summit or even the Tribal Water Stories, please send me an email. I'll be happy to send those over to you. And here we go. We'll segue to our next meeting. As I mentioned earlier, we have our plenary that's coming up on the 25th. I'm sure Jenny Marr will kind of discuss what that's all about. Jenny, are there any questions?
Let people know Barbara's here also.
Oh, and who's just as a person, Barbara Cross, our former tribal liaison.
Nervous.
So this is Kamyar.
Oh, we do have one question. I know, Jenny, you're going to talk a little bit about the plenary, but people are asking them what actually happens in the plenary and what kind of information is going to be shared. So that'll be...
Yeah, that's the next agenda. What I would like to bring up, and maybe, Emily, if you could go back to the work plan item. Currently, the way it shows up, the first Tribal AC meeting would happen in April of 2017, and it might be helpful to hear from folks on the webinar if you would like the first Tribal AC meeting to happen sometime between November and April. Because in April, we'll be holding the 2nd Policy Advisory Committee meeting because October 25th in the morning, they'll be having their first. And Anacita will be guiding us through a process to convene this the Tribal Advisory Committee that will help update 2018, and it'll be up to that committee to decide if they want to have their first meeting sometime this fall. So I just wanted to note that again, that's a draft, and make sure that you meet sufficiently. And then I would also suggest we add the 2018 Tribal Water Summit to the work plan, at least nominally in May. We are showing right now a Tribal AC meeting in May. However, if we're having the summit, that might be one and the same. So I just wanted to note that. And then on the engagement work plan, underscoring that in August, we'd like a joint meeting of the Policy and Tribal advisory committees to review basically the public comments on the draft and kind of a preview of what's going to be submitted to the governor's office and the administration for the final. And then in December 2018, as part of the rollout of the final, we'd like that, I think that would be good joint policy and tribal AC, and we'll also use that as the opportunity to get recommendations for what to do in update 2023, as we did last time. So just wanted to make those points.
Yes, thank you, Camera. Also, as you mentioned, the schedule is pretty fluid. And again, I understand that everybody uses the time, and and folks on the phone. I know you sit on other committees that are department convened, so we'll go back to the team and maybe we'll try to see if we can get some outreach meetings that maybe hit certain topics of interest so that you're all coming just for one day and not multiple times. You know, many of you may be familiar that every year in the spring we do our regional outreach regarding our sustainable groundwater management program. And so NCF discussed of maybe dedicating one half a day to groundwater and the other half on the water plan. So something like that where we'll be out in the area, full days meeting work, but different issues that are important to you.
And if before any questions, this is Anasita speaking, that also falls in line with Paul's outline in terms of the state alignment and that bulleted point of the state processes of SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. In early March, we will be having that funding resource be out for funding, as well as updates and the Prop 1 funding. So I do envision the need before April, the April meeting, a meeting needing to be done, if not January or February, no later than January or February, because I do think we need to have that type of individual launch with the tribal AC, really have an understanding of where these other funding processes are, especially given that we will be updating where DWR is in funding. That will also give us an idea of the complexion of what kind of tribal AC involvement we'll have. You know, this is going to be an open process for federally recognized, non-federally recognized tribes, tribal governmental organizations, non-governmental organizations that represents tribal communities, because we really want to have the ability to look at the policy positions that we're going forward with. I can't emphasize enough of the results and the outcomes from 2013 and 2009 of the Tribal Water Summit, and how that informed our legislation in 2014 to include the eligibility of applicants of tribal governments in SGMA, as well as Prop 1. And I really do think that was a direct outgrowth of the Tribal Advisory Committee's push and letters written to the natural resources agencies and the legislators at that time. There's a lot of good progress that have come up. I mean, even when you look at the Governor's Water Action Plan, when that came out, what we showed was the 2016 update, but that California Governor's Water Action Plan was actually penned in 2014 at the beginning of January, prior to the governor releasing his declaration of drought emergency. And in that Water Action Plan, there was very specific references throughout that 20-page document to tribal government interests, also being informed from the efforts of the Tribal Advisory Committee. So I really think that this is a really, really great opportunity to keep that momentum at this high level of policy analysis. And so we really want to have a Tribal Advisory Committee that recognizes and represents all those stratas that we have within our tribal communities. Not only the policy makers, the government makers, the government representatives on that leadership level, and as well as those who are actually, the water defenders at that activist and social political level. We need that combination of information to our agency and the department, because it can't be done without that combination throughout. But as you know, we are a department that we have to respond to mandated legislative actions. And it's up to our communities and our constituents to advance that agenda so that we then, once legislation is passed and mandated, then we can do the implementation process. So if there's individuals that are not on the phone that you know that can assist us with that kind of expertise and guidance and information, send a note to Emily and myself, because we want to be able to recruit the best that we have out there in Indian country.
Thank you, Anasita. That was very well said, and that's probably will be the adjourning comment, because that's what I hope people will take away, that your work has been instrumental, highly impactful, and we can even do more in this cycle of the water plan. So thank you all for that. And with that, was there a question, Lisa?
I think there's
it was about the plenary, so maybe we'll go ahead and ask Jenny Marr.
No pressure, Jenny. What's going to happen?
October 25 meeting.
Well, I'm glad there's so much interest up. Well, good morning. This is Jenny Marr. I'll just provide some brief information to pique your interest and encourage attendance in our upcoming meetings on October 25th. We'll have the inaugural Policy Advisory Committee meeting and the first Update 2018 plenary meeting, both at the same location, the Cal Auto Museum here in Sacramento. The Policy Advisory Committee will be in the morning, and then starting at noon, we will have the plenary meeting. The museum is going to be open to all attendees of these meetings, so arrive early, take breaks within the museum, but make sure you're aware that you're free to enjoy the museum. At the Policy Advisory Committee meeting, again, it'll be in the morning. We will talk about context of water management in California a little bit deeper than Paul covered today, including some of those drivers of change and recent initiatives like the Governor's Water Action Plan and the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We'll focus on, Paul will also present the focus and outline for Update 2018. And we'll go a little bit deeper into the charge, work plan, meeting deliverables, and schedules of the Policy Advisory Committee, similar to what you saw for the Tribal Advisory Committee meeting today. Invited speakers at this meeting include DWR's Deputy Director and Division Chiefs, and then Update 2018 managers. So the Policy Advisory Committee is open to the public, so we do encourage your attendance if you're available that morning. The plenary meeting starts at noon. We ask that folks RSVP online. You should have received a link from Emily or on the California Water e-news previously, but it is our intention to send the link around again after this meeting. So if you haven't RSVP'd, we encourage you to do so. When you RSVP, you have the option of selecting lunch. So we will provide lunch for folks that opt in, but you are also welcome to bring your own lunch or eat before you come and come early and enjoy the museum. So at this meeting, we'll be talking about, in a little bit deeper of a dive, the evolution of Water Plan Update 2018 and how we're building on the work that was done for Update 2013. Specifically, we'll talk about how Update 2018 will help implement the California Water Action Plan. We'll include a 5-year investment strategy and finance plan, which is also tied to the Water Action Plan from Action 10. And we'll recommend long-term state policy and investment priorities for water management. What we'll dive into a little bit deeper is this, developing a common understanding around sustainable water management. So Paul provided a little bit of a preview today, but we'll dive in a little bit deeper about those 4 societal values and what we mean when we say sustainable water management. Invited speakers at the plenary include secretaries of the California Natural Resources Agency, California Department of Food and Ag, and Cal EPA, so principal authors of the Governor's Water Action Plan. Also the Deputy Director of DWR and the Director of DWR, Update 2018 managers, and state agency program staff. And I believe you're being shown a preview of the draft agenda that agenda is posted online. So when Emily sends out the RSVP, you can go through the meeting materials and see the draft agenda. During the meeting, we will also be providing or conducting an interactive phone survey, which is at the bottom of your screen right now. So we encourage folks to bring your cell phone or any other text-capable electronic device. Well, it'll be a fun interactive survey, really just to elicit information on how well sustainability is defined at the state level, and really enforce some of these significant barriers that we see for water management in the state. So please make sure that you bring your text-based electronic device. And that's all. I know there's some questions, so maybe I'll let Lisa open it up to questions and make sure I specifically covered things that folks are looking for.
So will this mostly just, will there'll be new stuff though that they didn't hear today then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there is something special about the museum itself. You want to mention that, Tamara?
Special?
Yeah, with cars of a certain age.
The 1957 Oldsmobile that we're looking for. Some of you may know that the water plan came out in 1957. Some of you may, a few of you may also know that that's the year I was born. So I think I was destined to work on the water plan. And staff are ribbing me that they're going to find a 1957 Oldsmobile because this is not your parents' or grandparents' water plan. So.
But it's a Ford museum.
Pardon?
It's a Ford museum.
A Ford museum.
Is it just Ford?
Yeah, they have a little bit.
Oh, they have other they have other cars.
Technical.
So there was kind of the whole idea that we might get like a pageant moment where Camiar comes in convertible
There you go.
or something like that. So I think that, so if that won't get you the meeting, I don't know what will. But
I thought the special thing was they also sell cars at the auto museum.
Oh,
so
really?
Telling people to bring their checkbooks.
Okay.
Okay.
So do we have any questions, Lisa?
I think we're good, but people have been actually chatting online. Thank you, everybody that's been chatting online. And then I just want to do another shout out to Frank Ramirez. He and I are texting also. So people are engaged. They're just not photographers, I guess. So
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for those who are participating to the audience. Can you give Emily and myself an idea of how you feel about the webinar process? Because we know that it is difficult. I think that we'd like to do a combination. Obviously, the face-to-face meetings are most important, but if we get an idea that if we are, especially if we can provide from the department enough information in advance that say these are items for discussion, do a quick webinar that would be maybe an hour and a half about what those information items are, so to speak, like homework, so that when we do get a face-to-face meeting, we can do the deep dive into like the issues so that we can then be better informed for that April meeting. Because our goal is that the two meetings in 2017 will be somewhat of a tribal plenary meetings that then will inform us as our agenda and topics of concern for the Tribal Water Summit. So those are just the markers for a northern and southern meeting, and as well as those two major meetings to also give updates on all of DWR's other implementation programs going forward. So we really need to kind of get an idea of what's most efficient. I just see more and more meetings coming on everyone's calendars, and what I'm going to do from DWR is try to make sure that at every opportunity provide as much information as possible on our other programs, and then let you know based on agenda, so you could come in and out of a meeting if you're interested in Prop 1, you're interested in SGMA, the Delta issues, the California water fix issues, the state water plan, and also some of the habitat information that we do with the Eco Restore, which will then be going forward in the next few months.
Great. So if you're online and you have any comments about that, feel free to either raise your hand or send a chat message. Also, you can send an email to Emily, and you'll be receiving a follow-up from this webinar. You can just reply to that as well. So that kind of feedback, though, is important. And then we really want to try to make this helpful and useful to people. There's also other things that we can do. We can provide a call-in number that people can just call into directly. I know right now a lot of people actually do like using the web, though. That's become a way a lot of folks are communicating, but not everybody has the capability of the mics and that kind of thing. So maybe we can take a look at having some other options that way. We did get one comment so far, which is the webinar. I think the webinar is good for informational session, but it's harder for feedback just because it's hard to communicate this way. And this is from Claudine. She's suggesting that the big meetings need to be in person.
Yes, and those are intended for that roundtable discussion in person. The big meetings that were Emily outlined based on that grid definitely will be in person. But I do know, and I can inform this audience, some of you will be on a webinar that we're hosting tomorrow on the Water Storage Investment Program, is that in the second week in March, we intend to do an application workshop on that Chapter 8 of the Prop 1 funding. And I'm thinking that possibly maybe that March meeting would be a good opportunity to have the launch of the face-to-face meeting with the tribal AC. Given that I'm going to have a meeting space set up for that, and that might be the timing we talked about before that April meeting.
Mm-hmm. Blake has also said that having webinars to go over information relevant to the big face-to-face meetings would really be helpful. That would improve participation.
I think that might be a process we'll try.
Anybody else? To another nice advantage of the webinar, because we can record them, it allows people to kind of come back and pick up the slides and look at that. Anybody else like to comment on this? And again, you don't need to do that right now. You can reply to an email, or you can send Emily a note. Okay, looks like we're good for right now. But if you think of something, we'll be happy to stop. Just you don't need to answer right this second. If you think of something, just go ahead and chat.
And I do know that many of you on the line will probably be participating in San Francisco next week on the 24th, 25th, and 26th, and 27th for the US EPA Region 9 conference. And I know that that's going to, but we will, Emily and I will try to, the information provided for the plenary will be available online, Jenny, any of those presentations. So that will also be housed on the Tribal Policy Advisor website, as well as the Tribal AC website on the California Water Plan. So that information will be available.
Great. So this is Kamyar. I want to first thank the Water Plan team and the presenters today. I also want to, again, reiterate my appreciation for those who are participating on this webinar. When Emily sends out the follow-up email, if you could also include a link to the Water Plan e-news subscription. I know many of you already subscribe. If you don't, it comes out once a week on Wednesdays, and it is one of the ways that we communicate with the Water Plan community on upcoming meetings and interim products and other related reports and initiatives in state water planning. Also, again, to the extent that you can participate in the meetings on October 25th, we would really appreciate that. We'll work on figuring out when to schedule the first Tribal Advisory Committee meeting, and based on Anacita's suggestion, we might look to January or February of 2017 for that to happen. I am really looking forward to working with you in planning the Tribal Water Summit. As many of those who worked with us on the first and second, it was, especially the first, was convened by the sheer will of the tribal participants, and it is now almost come to be expected as part of the California Water Plan update process. And as Anacita noted, the outcomes of those summits have actually resulted in legislation and policy direction for tribal engagement and consultation. And I don't think we mentioned it, but Anacita will also be able to share with you DWR's tribal engagement and consultation policy. As you know, Governor Brown has advanced and directed state agencies and departments to all develop tribal consultation policies. This was one of the key recommendations from the Tribal Advisory Committee, and it must have reached the governor's ear because he and Cynthia Gomez have worked hard to make that happen, and it has completely changed the landscape for working with tribes and tribal organizations on not just water planning, but all resource planning and infrastructure planning in the state of California. And then finally, I'd just like to, a personal note, it has been extremely rewarding working with the tribes. I have learned immensely from you. I have not just on water topics, but on life and issues and life perspective. And as I noted earlier, one of the strongest recommendations from tribes was this has to be a generational, sustainable effort. And we are now getting around to doing that. And a lot of the legwork that you helped us do and the pre-work is getting has enabled us to make 2018 really focus on water sustainability and all that entails. So I'm looking around the room here to see if anyone has final comments. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Anacita, to have the last word of this webinar.
With my last of my voice. I took a vacation, and this is what I get. But I just want to also say thank you, Kamyar, and I just want to just reiterate DWR's commitment to moving forward, to having the facilitation services, the support we need, the planning arms that we need to really advance the issues and concerns of the tribal communities and government. And we cannot do that without, the strength and advisement from a tribal advisory committee. We will take the cues from the community issues, and I'm hoping that Emily and I talked. Did we mention a little bit about a survey, Emily, that you were going to be preparing? Yes, and so yes, so we will. There will be a survey from Emily that will be submitted out. In terms of, I personally would like to see the Tribal Summit not only, looking back at, what our recommendations are, but really also being a conduit for putting forward to the new administration. This is going to be a really timeless opportunity we're going to have. We're going to see a new change in leadership in California on many different levels, possibly on a national stage. And I really do think that we have to keep that in mind, not only from our micro perspectives of our tribal communities, but where we are as a state and as a nation right now. And I do know that, what comes out of California is very important on the national agenda. And if we can have a very strong and guiding documents that come out of that Tribal Water Summit 2018, it will really inform on national policies as well, because there is a lot of financing coming from the federal government with climate change initiatives and different items such as that I'm seeing come across the agenda. Unfortunately, we don't have the budget here in California to attend those meetings in D.C., but I'm sending the information that we have here that comes out of the various tribal advisory committees, as well as our tribal advisory government committee that assisted us with sustainable groundwater management. So I want to really look, to long-term processes in terms of setting national and state agendas, representing our tribal government. So I think with that, if there's nothing further, are we ready to adjourn this meeting? We'll just take a look at our computer here and see if there's any other final hands raised. Other than that, Thank you, everyone, for participating. And some of you, I'll be joining you tomorrow at the Water Storage Investment Program webinar. We'll see you tomorrow, as well as on the 25th. And then I'll probably see a few of you in San Francisco on the 26th at the US EPA. I think we have one additional.
One hand come up. If anybody wants to just make a last stop. Oh, looks like it's gone back down. If the group wants to just do kind of a virtual class, though, go ahead and.
Thank you, everyone. I'm signing off.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.